Welcome to the Elite FTS Table Talk Podcast with your host, Dave Tate.
Here we go. Table Talk episode 4, I suppose.
Here we go.
Riding solo.
Hold on one second.
Yeah, because that was going to drive me nuts.
Should be good.
So we're still going?
Yep.
Okay.
You might have it on yours. You got to mute your computer.
I don't hear anything.
It's delayed though, so just go ahead and mute this. Where are you mute over here?
Top button somewhere.
Okay. Well, do you want to go ahead and mute that, Dave?
And I turned it all the way down. Is that the same thing?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to be a little nasally today. Hopefully I won't get this flu shit that everybody else has had. But I'm flying solo, so Josh will be pitching me questions. And we'll kind of go from there. We got a lot of questions that we didn't get to with Holdsworth and with Wendler that were addressed to myself, and some other general questions as well. But before I start, typical day here at Elite FTS is there's always something going on. Actually, there's always multiple things going on. But before I came out here, there's a guy in the bathroom, and I guess I'll address this to Josh since he's the only person in the room. You ever piss yourself when you're standing at the urinal, but you don't really know how bad you pissed yourself until you look down and you're like, ah, shit, the whole front of your pants is full of piss?
Not typically.
Oh, come on.
But I've got a little piss in the pants before.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Are you addressing the fact that there was piss on the floor in there?
No, I'm addressing the fact that this dude had piss all over the front of his pants. But that wasn't so much the biggest deal. The funniest part about it is we don't have any mirrors in the bathroom. We don't have any mirrors in the compound anywhere. There's no mirrors in the gym. There's no mirrors anywhere. So
yeah, I use the microwave to put my contacts in.
Yeah, so he's like looking to see how bad he pissed himself. And I'm pretty sure he wanted to ask me, hey, dude, how bad did I piss myself? Then I could tell that he was looking for the, the thing on the wall, the hand dryer, to try to like hand dry the piss off your pants, which never works to begin with.
Yeah. And
then he starts like scrubbing himself with paper towels. And it's, while I'm laughing about this whole thing, last week I made the mistake. I always wear black sweatpants. I live in black sweatpants. Anybody knows me knows this to be a 100% concrete, verifiable fact that I think that the past 25 years of my life have been in black sweatpants. But I made the mistake of wearing gray sweatpants, man. I did the same thing last week. And all you guys are in there working, so I had to pull it out the back door, man. I had to pull, because our bathroom shares the office and the weight room, so I had to bolt through the weight room, tear out through the back door, and go home and change my sweatpants because I pissed the shit out of myself.
And there's more sweatpants here you could have got,
Yeah, but still, I would have to walk in there. My sister-in-law's warehouse manager. I'm never going to hear the end of that. So there's nowhere I can go. I can go one way, and my wife's going to be on my shit for pissing myself. So that's what happens when you get older, man. The worst piss story is now that hardly anybody uses multiply anymore, and there are some questions that are kind of directed towards that. So this is almost related, but not really. The worst thing is when you would get all your gear on for your squat training session. So you got your briefs on. Hell, you might even have 2 pair of briefs on. Then you have your suit on, and you're on, a handful of ephedrine. Then you got to piss, but you don't know if it's a real piss, or for those that are in the know, if it's a fake ephedrine piss, which means you just feel like you got to piss, but you really don't have to. Because the worst thing in the world is to have to pull all that shit down and then try to wiggle yourself out. I'll just stop there because you gotta know what I'm talking about. I need a guest for this one. You got to know what I'm talking about to know what kind of struggle this is, because you can go through 15 minutes of hell for a couple little drips that doesn't even account to anything, where it would have been better just to let it all hold in and use it as extra leverage for rebound out of the bottom.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun. We do have our first live question here, though, from Douglas Zelkowski.
Yeah.
He said, when did you think to yourself, I'm pretty strong?
I never thought that. I'm this bullshit. I was strong in high school. I was really strong in high school, and I think that was due to, I'm not going to take genetics off the table by any stretch of the imagination. That's obviously the biggest role in the whole thing, but I was aggressive. I was pissed off. I was young. I had a lot to prove. I had a lot to prove to myself. I had a lot to prove to a lot of other people. I was really not part of any group. I was the picked on teased kid, but I don't want to go into the whole, bully type of thing. It's just basically just a loner trying to find my way, trying to, in the world, and weight training was the thing that really changed my life. So I was extremely passionate about it. So while genetics definitely play a role, so does the fact that it was perhaps the only thing in my life that was really worth really living for in a non-negative context. I don't want to make it sound like I wanted to kill myself if it wasn't for training, but it was the only thing that I loved it. I loved it like you can't believe. So I put everything into it. So I did do my junior year of high school, I believe I did a touch and go 500 bench press when we were testing for football, and I did not train with the football team. The coach just kind of gave me an out on that because I was training with a group of older, experienced powerlifters, but I did still have to do their testing, which was the 40, the bench press, squat, vertical jump, and some other thing. But I remember hitting 500 and then thinking, well, shit, if I can do this, I should be able to do it in a meet. Because I never trained touch and go at that time. It was everything I did was training with the pause. Different style of training that I was doing back then. So it was surprising to me as well that I was capable of doing that. I think before I graduated high school, I did a 520 touch and go, and I did a 500 in a meet, and that was without a bench shirt. At the time, I didn't know what a bench shirt was. I don't even know if they existed yet. But as soon as they did, I was one of the first ones in them. I would say at that point in time, I realized I might be fucking strong. I might have some potential here because the squat was good. The deadlift was fair. I was never a great deadlifter, but the squat was in the 650, 700 type range. And deadlift, I think, was around 620, 600. And being your average high school kid, I'm thinking, wow, man, if I just stay on the same course, by the time I'm 20, I should be squatting like 1,500, benching, 960. You just forecast all this shit out, and you have no idea all the adversity that lies ahead or how long it takes sometimes just to put 5 more pounds on your bench. That would be the one time. After that time, reality started to hit pretty quick after I graduated. And I guess the genetic gains or the genetic potential, however you want to say that, things started to get hard. And I had to really think my way through and had to learn more about training than I ever thought I possibly would have to. But that would be how I'd answer that. So it happened to me very young, which I think is a good thing. Better younger than later.
All right, we got another one from Russell Taylor. He said, what's easiest on the knee, a regular squat or a pause squat? Or is there any other variations you would recommend to take the pressure off?
In my experience, I always got to preface all this stuff by saying I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physical therapist, da-da-da. But in my own experience with the people that I've known and have been around, the best type of squat for somebody that does have knee issues, and keep in mind knee issues is vastly defined as well, is it's a box squat. I've had more success with people just using the box squat than anything else when it comes to knee problems. Now, given the other variations that you presented, the free squat and a pause squat, generally speaking, the pause squat usually is going to be a little bit more troublesome, because what's going to happen there in most situations that I've seen is the lifter is either going to stop just short of threshold, or they're going to stop right in pain, which isn't, neither one of those is really addressing the issue. It can be debated. Stopping short of threshold can be debated if it is addressing the issue, because in a way it kind of is, because there is going to be a 10 to 15 degree variance based upon just the iso hold in the yielding or the isometric strength, or however that's being done at the time, which can help strengthen that. The free squatting is usually going to be the most troublesome, but sometimes just a change of stance, change of foot position, a change of hip position can make all the difference in the world. But I still am going to fall back on, you have to know what the actual real problem is. And if there's any lesson that I've learned over all my time in the sport is, you can, and I'm hard-headed. I'm one of the most hard-headed motherfuckers that's probably ever trained. So I can train through anything. You know, I've trained through anything, and I can probably tell anybody how to train through anything. But I'm also not an idiot, and I've gotten enough legal letters to know that I shouldn't do that, and I will never do that again. You know, even as far as advice to a friend, I won't do that. But you have to know what it is, because some things you can get by with doing that. Other things you can't get by with doing that. And having a good practitioner or orthopedic or a sports doctor on your side who can actually diagnose, the diagnosing is probably more important, in my opinion, than the treatment. Because the diagnosing, you can always get second, third opinions. A lot of the times those opinions are going to concur. They're going to be the same, not all the time, obviously. That's why you should seek different opinions. But there's going to be some similarities there. So you're going to have a pretty good idea of what the actual issue is. Where things get really vast is when it comes to the treatment plans and the different treatment options. Because now you're dealing with holistic approaches, you're dealing with exercise approaches, you're dealing with surgical approaches, you're dealing with, you know, every different type of approach in the world. And that's where it can get really confusing and frustrating. And frankly, you really don't have somebody that can help guide you down the right path, because whoever you think is going to guide you down the right path is still guiding you down their path. You know, so you have to kind of know, once you know what the issue is, then you can start exploring what the different treatment plans are, and then start talking to different people, talking to other lifters that have been around for a while, and see what's worked for them. Any lifter can tell you legally what they did for them. What they can't legally tell you is what you should do for you. So you have to know how to phrase the question. If somebody sends me a question and says, "Hey Dave, I heard that you tore your pec tendon. What did you do for that?" I can answer that, and I'm not scared to answer that. Somebody says, "Hey Dave, I tore my pec tendon. What should I do?" They're going to get a canned reply from me that basically says, "I'm not a doctor or a physical therapist. The question that you're asking me, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, go see a doctor." So that's a big hint, you know, when it comes to seeking advice. And then even when you do that and you're reaching out to different lifters, you got to do a little research on the mentality of the lifter. You know, it was the lifter when they competed, or if they still compete now, are they fucking out of their mind? Because if they're out of their mind nuts, then they're going to be more aggressive about how they go about their treatment plan, which may be more aggressive than what your mentally able to tolerate. And that's not a challenge statement. It's a factual statement. Some people can handle more pain than other people can. You have to be able to work within what your threshold is. Because at the end of the day, I think it was George Halbert that said this to me one time, which was enlightening enough that 20 some years later I still remember it. And it was dealing with, a strained pec scar tissue. So it was scar tissue. It wasn't so much the tendon. It was the scar tissue that laid down over the tendon over a period of time. And I had my ways, like I said, to be able to come back and not miss a single day's training. Where we had a conversation one time, and this was a more aggressive strain. It was something that I knew based upon past experience, this was going to take 3 weeks if I was to really, really push it. If I was to lay back on it a little bit, 5 weeks, and the meat was maybe 10 weeks out. So George's statement to me was, what the fuck difference does 2 weeks really make? And it was the right statement at the right time that just made me think, you know what? The fucker, he's got a point. Because the more aggressive that you go with that, yes, you can get back faster, but you're going to do so at a higher risk. There's a risk-benefit ratio to everything. The slower you come back, you're going to decrease that risk to a certain degree. When you're 10 weeks out, what difference does 2 fucking weeks make? So that changed my perspective on how to come back from muscle strains, pulls, and little things like that.
All right. How long do you think somebody needs to train to get an accurate idea of what sort of genetics they're working with?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I can really give, I'm trying to think. When I get a question like that I get stuck on, I try to go meathead mode first, because usually my gut intuition is usually going to be more along the lines of, am I correct? Then I start to think more analytical, falling back on my education and everything that I've read. And I don't think you really, here's the one thing I know for a fact. You don't know unless you fucking really try. That I know. So I can't put a timetable on it. Like, I can't say, look, within 3 years, if you're not at position X, then your genetics probably aren't suited for the sport. Because if you didn't really fucking try and you didn't put everything that you had into it, then you're probably not going to be there even if the genetics are good. It's very, very few people have such good genetics that they're just going to, by accident, fall to the top of a sport. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does, but they are so far outliers that they really shouldn't even be part of the conversation. If you're using it as an excuse, like the one statement, I don't hear it very much today as I used to hear it 10 years ago, is I'm a hard gainer. It's like, what kind of negative connotation bullshit is that? You just told yourself you suck and you're always going to suck. Everybody's a fucking hard gainer at some point in time. Give me the most genetically talented athlete in the world. At some point in time, they're going to hit a sticking point and they're going to have a hard time making gains. So there is no such thing as a hard gainer. What I used to say is there's no hard gainers, just no brainers. Because when things get hard, you got to think a little bit harder. Now, what usually pops up in conversations like this is, well, if somebody's 4'10", obviously they're not going to be playing in the NBA. We get that. Again, we're talking about outliers. But if you really want to get down into it, and I'm not that big of a sports fan, I'm sure I can find somebody that's too short to play in the NBA. I'm sure I can find somebody that's, too small to play in the NFL. I'm sure I can find somebody that's not built properly to lift big weights. There's always those exceptions that fall in there. But if you're not...
there's also weight classes too, though.
There are, yes, and there are weight classes. And sometimes that can be a limiting factor as well, because my leverage has changed several times because I think the first competition I did, I was 181, maybe 198, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't 181 because I was wrestling at the time, and it was around the same weight range, different weight classes, and the leverages for me, it was the deadlift. It's like, holy crap, I can actually pull kind of good. And then all of a sudden I would get a little fatter, I'd get a little thicker and be like, oh my God, my deadlift is just fucking, it's terrible. And then I gained a little bit more weight and I was able to start to use my torso out of the bottom of the pull, be like, holy crap, my deadlift is freaking awesome. And then I gain a little bit more weight and just, oh shit, there goes my deadlift again. My squat always went up. As long as I gained weight, my squat always went up. As long as I gained weight, my bench relatively always went up. When I drop weight, it's usually the squat that's going to get hit first, and then the bench, and then the deadlift would get a little bit better. But sometimes if you're in the sport of powerlifting and your goal is to maximize your greatest potential, the best thing that you can really do is to look around at people who compete in the same division that you do, see what weight class they're in, and look and see how tall the majority of them are. And you'll start to see some standards. If you're 6'2", and you're in 165 pound class, and there's one other 6'2" person in the 165 pound class, but in the 275 pound class, just about everybody is 6'2", that's a clue. That's not telling you to turn into a blimp and bloat up into that class, over a year period of time, but it's at least giving you a little bit of a trajectory. I have a terrible time saying that word, on where, if you want to maximize your potential in the sport, what direction that you should be going.
All right. Any tips on self unrack on the bench? Is that something you ever did?
Yeah, I think every one of us end up with that at some point in time. It shouldn't be that big of a deal because so many federations require the lifters to walk weights out now. So what's the difference? If you got to walk the weight out in a squat, you should be able to take the weight out in the bench press the same way. So sometimes I kind of wonder, why they even allow a lift off because of, inconsistencies like that. But getting back to the original question, it really depends upon the bench that you're using. And I'm in the equipment business, so I know just about every J hook that's out there. And the worst J cups that I've ever seen are these, I don't even know if they're J cups, they're like these rubber cone fucking things that they stick into the, I don't want to use the company's names, that they stick into the uprights of the bench. So it's this steep angle and you got to roll the bar kind of up and then it like falls out. Those are horrid. If you're ever in a gym and you got a bench like that, just go to the rack, find somewhere else to go. Just don't use it. They're terrible. A good J cup should be built like the Elite FTS J cups, to pimp my own brand, but they're built the way they are built for a reason. And it is so when you take the bar out, you can pull the bar out with your lats, and the J cup is not so deep that it traps the bar in the cup so you can't pull the weight out using your lats. If you look at a J cup on one of our benches or a bench that's built correctly, with the right J cup, you're going to see that the powder coating, stainless steel or whatever they're using for the coating on the front of the J cup is all worn off, or it should be, because that should be the lifters basically, to explain it a little bit better, dragging the bar over the front of the J cup. So that pulls it out. That allows the lifter to set up with their shoulder blades together and down, so packed tight. Then once you're in that tight position, if you have to press the bar up in any way, like a pin press, then you're going to lose that back tightness. When you're set properly, you want to pull the bar out, kind of like a pullover, and that's where you're going to pull it out over that J cup. When you do that, there's not going to be a whole lot of clearance between your bar path and the rack, the safety catch of the rack. So it makes it a lot easier to get the bar out by yourself because you're going to be in a tighter tucked position. You don't have to pull it out that far because you can, if need be, you can scoot back even further and still not worry about hitting the uprights. So if you're just laying flat, not packing your shoulder blades, sorry for the scratchy voice here, and trying to lift it out to where, the barbell is basically in the middle of the bench, then you're going to have a hell of a time trying to get that out by yourself. You're still giving, depending upon the lifter. It's my shoulder's trash, so I got shoulder issues. So there's a certain weight. For me, it's about 225. Sometimes on a good day, it's going to be 275. I have to have a lift out, or there's just no other way I'm going to be able to get it to come out. It's just the way it's been for so many years. I don't even know how far to go back. If that's the case and there's nobody else around, I'm just going to find something else to do, but I don't compete anymore. So if you're stuck and you don't compete anymore, and you still compete, I would look for alternatives, such as, pin presses, things of that sort. I'm not a big fan of the hooks, especially for the bench press, because if you miss that damn thing and you don't have a J cup or something set up, you're going to break your teeth out. So, and if it's still hard, let's address the technical issue, kind of address the mental issue. If it's still hard, build your lats up. That's the problem. Get your lats stronger.
All right, this guy's got 2 questions. What are your tips for longevity in lifting and being strong and healthy into your later years? And then regarding that, would you recommend swapping to a Swiss/football bar for pressing to maintain shoulder health?
Longevity is all these questions I think I look at more. It's funny because when I do the AMAs on my Instagram, I look at every question as a very simple general question that I can answer within one sentence and be done. When I do these things, I'm looking at every question like it's a big dissertation on how to go about addressing it. For instance, I don't know what the context of the longevity is. Longevity is extending the career as a competitive powerlifter, or longevity of extending your ability to lift weights for the rest of your life. So I'm going to answer both. So if it's longevity to extend your career as a power lifter, I think that's it's a cliff edge. It's you gotta here's the thing, you can compete as a power lifter from the time that you're 12 years old until the time that you're 80 years old if you want. If you never put the throttle all the way to the floor, if you always back off and then when things are going wrong, if you stay conservative, if you try to always make the best decisions, you'll have huge longevity, but you're probably not going to be a very good lifter. So the question is, how good of a lifter do you want to be? So that needs to be asked and answered internally. I can't answer that for you. For myself, and I didn't want to leave the sport asking what if. So with that in mind, I was willing to walk on the edge of the cliff as frequently as I absolutely had to. So when the day came that I knew it was over, I wasn't going to sit back and say, well, what if I would have done this, or what if I would have done this, or what if I would have done that? There is no what if. That was my mindset. my own personal mindset that I take ownership in. That's not your mindset. Nobody should make it your mindset. It should be your own decision on that. If that is the direction that you're following, that you want to push the envelope and see how far you can push your body to go, or how far you can push your sport to go, if you're at the upper echelon levels, then you're going to be walking on the cliff, and you're going to slip, and you're going to have to train through shit that's not going to be pleasant to train through. You're going to have to deal with adversity that you're not going to want to deal with. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be just like anything else that's really worth really fucking working hard for. You know, if you want the payoff, that may be there or may not be there. But I will tell you, if that's what you're seeking and the payoff isn't there in the way that you think it is, it will be there in being able to look back and say you did everything that you could. Now, from that longevity standpoint, just try to listen to those people around you who have more wisdom and experience than what you do, who have been around, and when they tell you to back off, back the fuck off. That's the best advice I can give you. If I would have listened to Louie when he told me to back off, and I would have backed off, I'm not going to say I'd still be competing today, but I can definitively say with 100% certainty I would have been able to compete for at least 5 more years, without a doubt. But I didn't, and I don't regret it. It's just the fact, I know that now looking back. You know, so that's the kind of things I keep in mind when I'm speaking to team members and lifters that I know personally that are in that same boat. You know, I'm not going to bullshit them about that, but that's the reality of that. Now, if you spend all your time backing off and you're backing off everything, you're going to go nowhere. You're just going to be spinning your wheels. You're just going to go from one injury to the next injury to the next injury. You're going to start this whirlpool, and just going to drain the life of you out of you. You're going to be done. Now, if it's increasing the longevity of your ability to weight train for the rest of your life, then most definitely, I mean, now we're talking, I just transferred the conversation from the people I trained with at Westside when I was there to the people I trained as a personal trainer during all the other hours of the day that I wasn't at Westside. 2 entirely different demographics. Do you seriously think I was having them go in and do max effort, suspended good mornings until their eyeballs were turning, red and their noses were bleeding? That wasn't the goal. That wasn't the objective. The objective there was health. The objective was longevity. The objective was, can they get out of their car if they're dropped off and they're on the passenger side and the curb happens to be there? If you're a big dude, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's like, if you ever want to fuck with a big dude, right there's how you do it. Pull up, drop them off at wherever you want to go, drop them off right at the curb, and make sure when the door opens, they got to step out right on the sidewalk instead of the street. But anyhow, just to get back on track here, that was to try my best to increase the longevity of their health. I don't want to say of their life, because while I am in this field, I am not under the belief that a healthier body is necessarily going to be a body that's going to live longer. Not based upon the statistics of death, why people die, what the top reasons are that people die, but it will increase the quality of their life. It will increase the quality of their relationships. And if you get an ex-athlete, an ex-football player, an ex-college football player, and they're a client of yours and they come and beat up, you got to try to get them to a place to where you're not beating them up even more, because for them, you want to reduce their pain. I don't know if, I'm a person that lives in pain 24/7, so I'm not a believer that anybody that's truly in pain 24/7 is ever going to be pain-free. But I am a believer, and you can do your best to keep them out of pain when they're in non-painful situations. In other words, if they're, in a movie or dinner or something like that, they don't have to be sitting eating dinner with their back in excruciating pain. That can be something that can be trained in such a way to make it more comfortable, so that's not going to be a painful situation. Other painful situations are, if how they wake up in the morning, you may not be able to do a whole lot about that, but you can do a lot about a lot of the other things. So that's the longevity answer. What's worked for me as far as my longevity, that's a whole different conversation. That's how to take somebody who's beat the living shit out of themselves and try to find a way to continue to keep beating the shit out of themselves, which I think is, if we want to go down that road, we can go down that road, but I think it only applies to a very, very small percent of the population. So I'm going to just kind of jump to the next question, unless somebody wants me to jump back onto this.
We can go to something different. You've mentioned in the past you wouldn't really recommend cutting weight unless you're going for a world record.
Mm-hmm.
What tips do you have for somebody cutting for a world record?
Find somebody that knows what the hell they're doing.
Nutritionist?
No. I didn't say that. Fuck, shouldn't say that. Professionally, yes, you should find a registered dietitian. You got to cover your asses. There's an art to this, man, and it's not. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of things that go into it that happen even in federations that say these things don't happen, but they still do happen. And it's not something that's medically conducive to be able to make a whole video about, as far as, how to dehydrate the shit out of yourself, take diuretics and, hydrate back with IV fluids and all the other things that kind of go along with this whole situation on how it all works. So I'm going to kind of sidestep it and say, when you get to that point, the person you need will be there. I'll just leave it at that. If you think that you're at that point and the people that you need to be able to help you do that are not there, then you're not to that point yet. And just leave it at that, because it's a dangerous game. You have to have people around that know what the hell they're doing, and you have to have people around that know, when it's time to call 911. I mean, we're not talking about pleasant situations here. We're talking about things that a lot of people I know have ended up in a hospital due to dehydration.
Louie didn't have drinking fountains?
Drinking fountains. Actually, did we have a drinking? I don't know if we had a drinking fountain or not. At the last gym we were at, I think we had one, but we might have. We certainly didn't fucking use it.
Apparently not. What was your toughest adversity with lifting in life, lifting/life, so you can kind of choose, and how did you overcome it? There's a lot, it's here's the thing. I can ramble off a lot of things. I can ramble off going back to having to make a decision between wrestling and football, as a teenager. It doesn't seem like a big deal. I mean, but at the time, it was fucking earth-shattering. I can go back to, times with a tutor when I was a kid, and being in meetings, listening to my parents speak to principals and, learning disability specialists, and
hearing things that they were saying about me and having to deal with all that. And looking back now, it kind of seems like, not that big of a deal. Then I can think about, legal business issues that we've had to contend with. I can think about issues I've had to deal with, with my spouse. And here's the thing, guys, it's all irrelevant because adversity is part of life. Without adversity, there's no prosperity. So you need to be able to learn from these adverse conditions, because I can sit here and tell you that, that decision that I had to make between wrestling and football was not really that big of a deal. But at the same time, there might be some 13-year-old kid right now listening to this that's really, really fucking struggling with this and has two coaches on one side and a parent on another side. And I mean, it's right now fucking his world up, and it's occupying every thought in his brain. And I'm not going to sit here and say, that was not that big of a deal. Because at the time it was. Because everybody's ability to deal with adversity is different. And the important thing is to deal with it, to address it for what it really is. It's the realism. I like to talk, and I've spoke before on past table talks about false narrative. A lot of times we let our minds get consumed with false narrative. So there could be a situation going on with, let's fall back to the wrestling football thing, since I'm on that. Let's fall back to that, and I'm trying to figure out which one I want to do. I start telling myself in my head, well, if I wrestle, then I got a better opportunity. I got a better career because I'm a better wrestler than I am a football player. I love the sport. I love the discipline of the sport. I love the coach that I'm working with. I love everything associated with that, and I got a pro and con sheet for everything with that. Then on football, it's like, okay, everybody's telling me I should play football because I suck as a team player, and it's going to help me develop, teams building skills. It's going to help me develop as a leader where you're 13 years old. I mean, the fuck, what the hell do you know about leadership at 13 years old? And so it's all this back and forth. It's all this back and forth. And then you're like, well, if I don't play football, then I'm going to suck as a leader, or if I play football, then I'm going to suck as a leader, but then I'm going to suck at football, and then I'm not going to be able to go any further, or I'm not going to like the sport, or I'm not going to play. And you tell yourself all these stories, and it's all bullshit. It's just all false narrative. And if anybody thinks back to any adverse situation that they've ever been in, if it was breaking up with a significant other, or some type of legal challenge, or a very hard decision that you had, I'll guarantee that you stayed up nights thinking about different scenarios that could play out with this. Now, when you go back and you look at that a year removed, 2 years removed, and you look at what the actual outcome was, it probably wasn't any of the scenarios that you even thought of. So how much time was wasted on the stress and the false narrative, or if you're training, how much cortisol was was created, how much stress was created that was fucking up your gains, to keep it from a training standpoint, just trying to deal with this situation that didn't even turn out the way that you thought it was going to turn out, but it was all you were consumed with. As we get older, and as I've gotten older, I've began to learn how to look at things with more realism. So if it is a situation or an adverse situation, the first questions I'm asking is, how much control do I have over what's happening right now? What do I not have control over? Then I don't worry about what I do not have control over. I got to table that. I'm aware of it, but I got to table that. It's not even worth my thought. It's not worth my time. I focus on what I have control over. then whatever I have control over, is this something that I need help with? Do I need to call somebody? Do I need to call a good friend of mine? Do I need to call somebody who's going to be, it's funny how we work as humans, do I need to call somebody who's going to enable me to allow me to do what I want to do? Or am I going to call somebody who's going to be more realistic with me and tell me the truth? Or has this crossed the boundary where I need to call somebody from, on a more professional level to be able to talk things through, that's going to see things from a perspective that I'm not going to be able to see it through? Or is now this become something that I have to call somebody from a different professional discipline, an attorney or, tax advisor or whatever it's going to be. And then once that's done, and once that conversation's done, it's like hot potato. I hand off to the attorney, I hand off to the tax advisor, I hand off to, whoever's going to be advising with that situation, and I'm done. I wait till they come back with what their suggestions are, and then have the conversation then. And I'm able to reduce that false narrative or that bullshit that's going on in my head by 80 to 90%. What that allows me to do is to take that 80 or 90% and focus on better developing myself, better developing my business, better developing and looking at my staff, what things do they need support with? Because trust me, when you run a business, they become the ones that get taken advantage of too frequently, too often, and the ones that are not thought about as much as what they should be. So that when I have those adverse conditions and I have those questions that I ask myself with this new free time, that's one of those main questions that I ask, which allows me to circle back and think, oh shit, yeah, maybe I should probably ask about this. And when you run a business, it's not everything everybody cracks it up to be either. So there's going to be things, that fall through the tables, but there's a hierarchy of priorities as well. Your staff definitely has to be up there as one of those, but you have to be up there as, number one, because without your own mental health and your own cognitive ability and your own ability to deal with the adversities and to deal with all that, then they don't have a position, and so forth and so on from there. So very long nasally question or nasally answer dealing with adversity, but I really do think that adversity and drama are two entirely different things. Adversity can cause drama, and drama can cause adversity. But a lot of the times, the drama is just the false narrative that's part of the bullshit that's stemming out from not being able to intensely look at the realism of the situation that's in front of you.
All right. What was your worst meet like, and what went wrong? I think you may have told me this story before about the your pec being in the wrong spot. I don't know if that's the one, but
I've had a lot of bad meets. Thank God for open powerlifting. Every time I go there and they update more of my meets, I see more and more of them. That would be an interesting podcast there, is to go through and look at every one of my meets and explain what the fuck went wrong with all those.
I mean, were you normally going 9 for 9 or?
Oh, fuck no. 9 for 9 means I didn't try. The worst one I think was, and any powerlifter is it's always never the powerlifter's fault. So there's always an excuse. But, and I have an excuse for this one. It was a good one. It was a junior nationals that I believe was in Aurora, Illinois. And
what year was that?
Ooh, it had to be mid-90s, somewhere around there. It may be listed on, I don't even know if it's listed, on my listing or not. But it was a fucked up meet. It was the squats went fair. I mean, fair. It was one of the first meets, I think. One of the first few meets that I did after coming to Westside. And I was still really trying to get used to this whole not squatting in the gym before you go to a meet squat thing. Like, we would train on a box all the time. Never free squatted, ever. Everything was done on a box. Max effort work, dynamic work, everything was done on a box. Everything was done with just briefs. So now I'm in a meet and I'm still like, this is the third time. I'm like, fuck, I'm not used to my straps being up. I haven't had my suit on in 6 months. The knee wraps are fucking killing me because I never had knee wraps on. And so I'm trying to get used to all this kind of bullshit. And I made it through the squats. And I later found out a lot of this was just having the confidence in Louie and having confidence in the program, because things did all kind of fall together. But I struggled with it. So when people, bring up these type of situations, it's not like I don't know what they're talking about. I struggled with it. And then the second lift was the bench. And same thing. I mean, I haven't had my bench shirt on since the last meet. And I opened it lower mid fives, 520-ish. I'm not really too damn sure. And it was easy, but my ass came up. And Louie tells me, go up. It was easy. Go up. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, you sure? He was like, go up. Because I could have done it for 12 freaking reps. And so I went to 550-ish, 555, something around that range, and smoked that. He's like, go up. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I got red lighted again. My ass was coming up each time. The one thing lifters don't have to deal with today that I had to deal with is a lot of times in the warm-up room, you might have a bench that was competition legal. It'd be 17 inches. And then you get to the platform and it's 15. So you get to the platform, now you have to change your setup. And I was a lifter that benched with my legs out in front of me. I didn't tuck them behind. So your hips are going to flex as high as what your knees are. Well, I knew as soon as I sat down on the first one, it was like, oh, fuck. It's like you sit on that really, really low toilet seat and you realize, oh, shit, this is a really low toilet seat. And I didn't adjust. And then, the hips came up on the first one, the hips came up on the second one. And so Louie, what the hell? I said, go to, my best was 585 at the time. He said, break a PR, you're killing the shit. Break it. So I don't know if it was, it could have been 590, it could have been 600. I'm going to fall more along the lines based upon of how we worked at Westside. It was always a 5-pound PR. So I'm going to say it was 590 and smoke that. Red lighted for that. So I'm sitting in the warm-up room and fucking pissed off. Got my sweats on and sweatshirt on. Louie comes back. He's like, what the fuck you doing? Why are you not getting ready to deadlift? Like, I bombed out. It's like, you bombed out? What the fuck? You bombed out of what? You just smoked 3. Louie, Jesus Christ. My ass came up on all 3 of the benches. And he's like, really? I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. I moved to this place and this guy doesn't even fucking know what my bench is, Then that's when I kind of realized that, while Westside is Westside, and I love Westside for everything that it was, there's a lot of things that you kind of have to learn along the way. And one of the things you had to learn along the way is that you had to make sure that you had people helping you who weren't Louie, because he was there with 15, 20 other people that he was responsible for. So by no means am I putting this blame on Louie. It just sucked because everything felt good. The pace of the meet was really good. That might have been a meet that I think I could have went 9 for 9 for, but could have doesn't mean a damn thing. And I think in a lifter's life, you go 9 for 9 maybe twice out of 20 years of competing. And I think I had one, and that could have been the second one. But it was, so that to me, that sucked because it was a blown opportunity that, I probably should have known better. I've had other meets where there's been injuries and so forth, but I don't look at those as really bad meets because sometimes you can control the stuff, sometimes you can't. I look at this as a bad meet because I could have controlled this. You know, this was one of those things that was within my control, and I did not take ownership of it, and I should have known better having been in the sport for 12, 13 years beforehand. So that's one of the meets that I'm probably the most disappointed in.
I got one. This is actually just from me. I think we've talked about this before, but what's the worst injury you've seen at a meet?
Mark Bartley.
You were at that meet?
Yeah, that was terrible. It was bad for a number of reasons. I mean, it's bad to see any lifter go down because sometimes the worst injuries don't even look bad. You know, sometimes you'll see a lifter just stand up with a weight and it's fine. You know, it's a good lift. And then you see in the warm-up room, you're like, oh, my God. You know, like they got a spiral fracture of their femur and their legs are already fall off. I mean, just nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. Other times you'll see things that look horrid, and then the guy will just pop up, and it's not a big deal. Marx was just bad, I think, because I you know, he was part of the team, so I knew Marc really well. On top of that, you know, I have a personal relationship with Marc. He was on point for that meet. It was a 1,200-pound squat, which I think at the time would have been an all-time highest squat ever made, or very close to. Definitely an all-time world record. And everything that could have tore. I mean, both quad tendons, his shoulders. It was bad. But the thing that stuck in my mind more so than anything else is usually after a lifter would get hurt, I'll kind of eventually make my way back to the warm-up room to make sure that they're not dying, you know, which they're not dying, but just see if they're okay. And the question I'm normally asked is, because I've been around, as I noted before, I've been hurt a lot. So usually the question I get asked is, how long is this one going to take? He didn't ask that. You know, he just looked up and he said something along the lines of, fuck, this sucks. And it was a look in his eye that that's what got me more than anything else. It wasn't the lift. It was just, I could see in his eyes that he didn't think that he was going to be able to come back from this one. And he might have, you know, thought that he could. And he may have even tried to. And this is not a knock on Marc in any way. It's just and I could have completely misread the look on his face, but I never saw that before. And it was like, man, this shit, this is, it's kind of how we all want to go out, I guess, in a way. Not all of us, but some of us. Yeah, some of us meatheads. But when you see it, you really question, like, man, is this really the way that you want to go out? And
no, you
know, he's done well for himself from all that, and you know, was a great lifter. Actually, today he is a very he doesn't get enough respect for the lifting that he did do, you know. And he's not one that's real brash. He doesn't brag a lot, but look his numbers up. I mean, it's for the guys that know or have heard of Marc Bartley, man. Look his numbers up. Look his longevity up. This dude was for real. You know, he was 100% fucking for real.
All right. Speaking of geared lifting, I don't know if this was directed towards you and JL or you and Wendler, but it's why don't you two hit depth? So you're gonna have to answer that for whoever that was for.
Hit depth, according to fucking who? You know, there's like one. I think I have one squat. One competitive squat of me lifting online, and then there might be another one, which is in Westside versus the World, I believe, which, you know, so 2 squats out of a shit ton of meets. So say hundreds of competitive squats, 2 squats, which I think, They got white lighted, they passed. I don't think a whole lot of people are going to sit there and say they were high. So my first question to that would be, how do you know my fucking competitive squats were high when they're nowhere to be seen? That's just speculative bullshit, which that's my first thought. The second thought is, if you think they're high, that's fine. You got every right to think that they're high. If you were there, you were there. It's whatever. I don't really, makes no difference to me. My career's been over for a long time. So that is what it is. The other part is you need 2 whites to pass. So I'm not going to get extra pounds for every inch lower I squat in a meet. So I have nothing to prove to anybody by squatting 4 inches lower. I also came up through the USPF when there was maybe 2-3 federations. There wasn't many at the time. And you want to talk about fucking having to break parallel. That was some bullshit. And so if you want to say that all my squats were high, well, let's just call them all even based upon all those fucking things I had to do that were 5 inches below parallel and didn't pass. Now, let's assume that we're not talking about competitive lifting, which I am assuming is the case, that they're talking more about spider bar squats and crap like that they'll see me do. Rarely do I post anything on Instagram. The reason why I squat where I squat is both of my hips are replaced. And wear and tear is wear and tear. Just because you get a new hip does not mean you have a new lease on life. What it means is, to put it in layman's terms, let's say you have 10,000 rotations per each hip replacement. And it's more than that, but let's just say that's what it is. That starts counting backwards from the day you start doing rehab. They're only going to be able to replace that thing so many times. So repetitions to me matter. So there's certain things that matter to me when it comes to trying to increase the longevity of my hip replacements, knowing full well I am probably going to have a second of each one, that I will go through having them both done before 50 years of age, or one done at 45, one done at 50. More than likely, I'm going to both need to have them redone. The goal is to only have to have that done once. Things start to get a little tricky after that. So I'm a little bit more aggressive now than I'm going to be when the time comes to have the replacement replaced. Things are going to change there. With that in mind, and extensive conversations with my orthopedics, three different orthopedics that I've spoke to, I keep a lot of things in control. I guess it's not the real word I'm looking for. There's contraindications. So there's things that you should or should not do post hip replacement, but you can still pretty much do whatever you want. It's hip replacements have come a very, very long way, but I'm taking things a little bit more serious because of the loading of the things that I love to do. I love to squat. I love to squat heavy. So the reason why I use a spider bar squat or a safety bar squat for the first reason is I can't hold a straight bar. So that's a shoulder issue. That's a different topic for another day. The other reason is I can squat with them. I mean, that's the reason why I use those bars. The reason why I use a box that's high is I want to be 1 to 2 inches higher than 90 degrees hip joint to knee joint, which would be where the first rehabilitation restriction would be post-surgery. Now, keeping in mind that I want to try to lift the heaviest weights possible. I want to put the greatest load on that I possibly can in the safest position I possibly can. The lower I go and the more I increase that fulcrum, the more I increase that lever, the more stress that goes onto that lever. So the lower I go, I can go, on a 6-inch box with 315 and risk popping the stupid thing out, or stay at that 90 degrees or 2 inches above 90 degrees, go as heavy as I fucking want and never run into that risk because of how the hip joint is designed. So because of that, I squat on a box that's high. The lowest I'll go would be 90 degrees, would be the complete knee to hip parallel. Depending upon how groins and things like that feel, it's usually a mat or two higher than that. The other reason why I like to stay higher is I can get the training effect from my quads and everything else on the machines and all the other stupid shit that I do. The one training effect that I really can't get on all the other different exercises that I can get from the heavy squats is the joint stability. So I can load 700-800 pounds, whatever it is, on a spider bar or safety squat bar or whatever it is. Just unracking that and holding that in a braced, tight position is building bone density that my body is in a constant process of trying to lose now as I get older. It's building joint stability in all the muscles and connective tissues that are holding that replacement together. And it's also building my ability to be able to absorb load as I sit down, which would be able to increase my strength if I step out of my car and slip on ice, because at that position you're at a higher level as far as where your levers are from your hip to your center of gravity. So there is methods to my madness besides just throwing this shit on there. The reason why I use the reverse bands or I use the chain is to decrease the amount of tension that's on the joint in the most vulnerable position for me, which is at the bottom. So what that ends up creating is, yes, something that looks like a stupid, ridiculously dumb load at the top, which is why I troll and make fun of myself, because it is ridiculously stupid looking, but it's accomplishing all the training goals that I'm doing this for. Now, what I don't post is I do have, dynamic days that I still do that there may only be 275, 2 plates and a quarter per side on that. So that kind of explains that. I can't speak for Jim. I got a low battery warning flashing over here.
On your computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just went out. I don't know if I need it, but...
Yeah, you don't really need that for now. It'd be a hassle to have to
okay.
put around.
But I hope if that didn't answer the question, by all means ask again in a different way, or DM me on Instagram and I'll try to figure it out, because I'm cool with criticism. People can make fun of me all they want. If they want to know why I do certain things, I'll be more than happy to tell them why I do certain things. There most definitely are things that I do in the gym that are 100% ego related, and that's not one of them, but I'll be more than happy to share whatever those are if you ever see them.
All right. On the board at Westside, why was there 2 records under the super heavyweight?
The 308 class didn't always exist. So when Louie first had the board made, it was 275 super heavyweight. And so you couldn't make a new board. So he shared the super heavyweight and the 308, so he just divided it in half. And there's how it happened, which is, it's kind of weird because it's open powerlifting is doing actually a phenomenal job, because a lot of the things that they're importing into their database, and I want to call them out again because they're doing a great job, because it is open source. They're doing it for free. Buy their t-shirts. I have no association with them. Support these guys, man, because this sport needs history. It needs history bad, and this is kind of supplying that history. But they're able to go back and see how much these guys weighed. So there were a lot of super heavyweights at the time, years ago, that may have only weighed 304 pounds. where now they're able to stick them in there as 304 pounds, and then you can kind of see where they're going to rank if they were in that 308 class that exists today.
All right. This one says, so I understand you can deload max effort days by doing a lift you suck at to decrease the maximal load used. Does the same thing apply to speed days, or would you just cut the sets by half?
Deloading with conjugate training is one of the things that I want to beat my head against the wall with. There's deloading is inherently built into the conjugate model. So let's make this easy. Let's break it into just 3 components of a conjugate model. So let's forget about low hanging accessories like side raises and prehabs and warm-ups and stuff like that. Let's forget about GPP. Let's just set that kind of stuff aside, and let's just focus on the max effort work, dynamic work, and what I call the supplemental work. The supplemental work is the main exercise that's usually trained with a submaximal weight. That's going to provide the desired effect to try to increase the strength of one of the 3 main lifts. So it's usually the second exercise that's done for the day, or sometimes can be done in replace of the max effort exercise. On the max effort day, the goal of that day is simply to strain. So there are different types of maximal effort contractions that you can do. There's, there's the concentric only, which nobody seems to fucking understand what that means. It means lifting the weight up and either racking the weight or having somebody help you lower the weight. It doesn't mean starting at a bottom position, lifting the weight up and lowering it back to the bottom position. That's just a reverse lift. It's still, forget it. I'm not going to go on and rant about that. But there's maximal concentrics, which would be like a deadlift would be an example of that. Doing a good morning from suspension straps to where you would either rack it into the monolift or you would have your spotters up lower or back down again. There's other variations of that type of stuff. There's isometrics can be considered, max effort type of motions. The straining for a 1 rep max, straining for 2 rep max, and straining for a 3 rep max the 2s and the 3s can kind of be considered max effort. It's all time under tension. Everybody defines it a little bit differently. I try to make it simple and just say max effort is 1 rep. That leaves everything else being submaximal, but there is some crossover on how people discuss that. So I'll put that out there. Cycling max effort work is based upon your recover ability, your ability to recover is what it is. So some people are going to be able to recover from some exercises just based upon their joint levers better than what other people will. Some people can deadlift 5 days a week and recover because they're built to deadlift and their levers are just freaking awesome for it. Other people deadlift once a month and they still can't recover from that. Some people can do good mornings night and day and have no problem. Other people do a heavy good morning and they're fucked for 3 days. So that's kind of where our concept of, builders and testers come in. But I'm going to back out of that because I don't want to make this too confusing. Cycling of the max effort work should happen because over a period of time, if you're a beginner or intermediate, you're not going to have this big list of max effort exercises. You're going to have a list of maybe 6, 8, 10 different max effort exercises you're going to rotate through. After you do that a few times, you're going to realize, hey, I recover pretty fast from a board press. I don't recover that well from a close grip bench press. So then you start thinking, okay, If I start to feel like I'm getting run down, then maybe I should probably do the close grip bench press. Or maybe if I don't recover really well from a two board press, or recover very well from the close grip bench press, perhaps I should do the two board press the week after that. All right. Or you can just do it the way that I've always done it and the way that we did it when I was at Westside. Figure it out that morning. So you go in the gym and it's like, what do you feel like doing? Well, shit, this hurts, this don't. And then you figure out what you want to do and then hit it and work up to the maximal attempt. And as you're working up, if it doesn't feel like things are going well, then divert. And, if it feels really, really bad, divert and don't do it. If it feels really kind of bad but not so bad, divert and do a triple. If it feels good, then work up and hit the single. It's really not that complicated. And if you do what you really want to do that day, as long as it's not the same thing that you did the week prior, and you're keeping a pretty even mix of squatting, good morning, deadlifting, and so forth, then you're going to want to do it. And the more you're going to want to do something, the more you're going to put more effort into it, the more focus you're going to be able to put into it. So that, in essence, has its own way of deloading kind of built into it, especially where, say, every 3 or 4 weeks, depending upon the person, you might slip in a repetition method movement, where it could be 5 rep good mornings for the lower body. It could be high rep dumbbell presses for the upper body. That, has been something that Louie's talked about many times. I've wrote about several times. Anything can be slipped in there as long as it's something that's nutrient enriching. In other words, it's high reps. It's going to help your body to recover. It gets flipped in there. That kind of takes care of the recovery needs associated with max effort work. The dynamic work works on 3-week pendulum waves. So that means that you're going to hit week 1, week 2, week 3. So it's going to ascend for 3 weeks. Then you're going to go back down to week 1 again, which descends. So when you go from week 3 to week 1, that just deloaded. So the dynamics kind of automatically got that deload built into that. The supplemental work, you should be changing those exercises depending upon how you have them structured or how you want to do them. Some people like to stay with the same thing on, say, if it's Monday's max effort day, like to stay with the same supplemental exercise for 2 or 3 weeks as the second movement on Mondays and then slide out of it. Some people will stay with it until they can't add more weight or they can't do more reps. Some people will do it for 1 week and then slide out of it, 2 weeks and then slide out of it. Same thing for the bench press. Whatever movement that is, may stay for a week, may stay for 3. The more advanced the lifter is, the more I say that it should stay in for maybe a week, 2 at the most, and then kind of get it out, unless you're really, really playing with the set and rep structure. But that there again has its own type of periodization built into it to help with any type of deloading process and as well as accommodating or as well as progression and all the other factors associated with building strength. Where you run into problems is when you're not changing anything. If you're doing the same max effort exercise the exact same way, followed by the same supplemental exercise the exact same way, and then the same over and over and over and over, then you're not only going to run yourself into the ground, you're going to run yourself backwards. So from a deloading perspective, a lot of that's kind of already inherently built into the program if you learn how to listen to your body, which is extremely important, and know the difference of when your body's tricking you and when your body just needs to pull back a little bit. And the second aspect of that is peaking for the meet, which I get a lot of questions about that on. And on this simple, there are table talks, several of them that are on this, so you can just search that and get probably a more detailed answer than what I'm going to provide here. But on the most simple level, it's just if it's for a beginner or intermediate, you got a 3-week wave, you just repeat week 1 on the week before the meet, and then you go to the meet. And then you don't pull depending on the person, 14, some people 21 days out. You know, the last heavy bench should be 7 days out. The last heavy squat could be anywhere between 9 and 14. It depends upon the person. You know, you kind of learn that. If you're unsure, you know, keep it a little bit closer. And then the more advanced you get, try to move it further away. You know, I know a lot of more advanced lifters that do phenomenally with 21 days out being their last heavy lifts. And it takes time to be able to, I don't want to say it takes time to be able to accommodate that. It takes time to be able to build the trust, and that's what you have to do to be able to work. And it may not work for everybody, but it's worked for the majority of the people that I've seen.
All right. How to fire a client or customer, how to cut negative people, even if a family member out of your life, maybe how you would go about that.
Several questions here. We're not a big company, you know, so there's still less than 20 employees. During the season, we might go a little bit over 20. So the customer one's pretty easy. If a situation makes itself or ascends itself to, what's the word I'm looking for, where it makes its way up a hierarchy. If the situation gets to my phone or it gets to me, then I more than likely am not going to be having a very pleasant conversation with the customer, because that means that they've already gone through at least 2 or 3 of my employees and probably pissed off all 3 of them. So that's kind of how I handle that. So if it gets to me and it's gone up through an employee chain to get to me, then that's kind of how I go into the conversation, and that's probably not really fair, you know, to put it that way. But it's been true in every case. Now, if I do get a complaint, and this does happen, and I really appreciate these. I really do. I feel fortunate, and I'm very humbled, and I'm very grateful that I do get these. I will get customers that will send me things through email or through my DMs and let me know of situations that I may not otherwise know of. And sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, did you know your site was down? Which more than likely I did know, but there's been some times I didn't know, you know. So in cases like that, you know, that helps. You know, I'm very appreciative of that. Or it could be in the way that a certain situation was handled. And then it brings it to my attention, and we're able to figure out what the situation was. You know, it could still have been, you know, they're all miscommunications when you get down to it. They're all miscommunications, and they're all some type of breakdown and some type of system. And when it's brought to my attention, typically through, you know, a DM or something like that, and then almost always in every case is some type of system breakdown. You know, something didn't work that should have worked, that we are able to go back and help correct. And then I'm very grateful, you know, that the person brought it to my attention, and, you know, I'll hook them up for that, because, you know, they saved me the stress and the aggravation of potentially hundreds of other customers that may have experienced or may experience the same thing, or have, you know, experienced the same thing, but didn't let me know. So for that, you know, I love that. It's just, it's a different type of customer, you know, the type that's going to send me a DM compared to the type that, you know, it's when you're in retail, you know, and we all are in retail in some way or another. It's either, you know, we're either in the e-commerce business selling product, or you're in the retail end selling product, or you're in the retail end purchasing product. We're all in the retail end. And unfortunately today, most retailers still basically don't give a fuck about their customers. We do, and we'll do whatever we can do to try to make the situation right, even if it means that it's going to hurt, on our end to be able to do that. And we do that, but unfortunately what that creates is through the phone, is our customer service reps are going to get pounded, and because they assume the customer assumes if something is wrong, whoever's going to pick up the telephone is not going to care about wanting to help them in one way or another. So the first thing, we have great customer service reps, the first thing they have to do is diffuse the situation and then to bring it down from there. And if it escalates, that's the word I was looking for earlier. If it escalates up a couple more channels and then it gets to me, I'm not going to deal with I'm not going to deal with it, because I have very well trained customer service reps that are amazing at what they do. They'll go out of their way for anybody. So if it gets to me, then it's not going to be I haven't had one escalate to me for several years, and there's probably reasons why for that. Now the other one was dealing with negative people that just are in your life. Some of those people you have more choice over if they're in your life or not. So you need to understand that. Sometimes it's just don't go to the same places that they're at, and you just remove the problem, because a lot of the times they probably don't give a fuck if you're there or not. The second question to ask is, how do you know you're not that person? Everybody likes to talk about all these negative people in their life that are pulling them all down, but I don't hear very many people looking at themselves and looking in the mirror and saying, hey, who am I pulling down? Kind of funny, isn't it? So it kind of works both ways. So I think there's got to be some interest perspective. It's not my day for words here. I'm trying to use bigger words that I'm more intelligent to use. That needs to be taken into consideration with that as well. And of course, and then families, it's family's family. I got my views on family, and it's going to be different than what other people's views of family are. And I don't want to get into, different values and views on family and things such as that. But, to me, you don't turn your back on your family. You don't have to be close to your family, but if shit hits the fan, you should be there for your family. It's just the way it is. Now, I understand, shit can happen, with families. I've seen shit happen with families. I've seen shit get really bad with families, and some things are just not going to be reconcilable, and that's fine. The way that you deal with that is you just move forward. Earlier I spoke about, false narratives. It's the same thing. You can't dwell and just keep reliving past mistakes, and you can't dwell and keep reliving somebody else's past mistakes. At some point in time, you just got to move forward from that, even if you're forgiving them, just so you can be able to move on, then you just move on. But, if you're going to forgive them so you can move on, then move the fuck on. Don't forgive them so you can move on, but then still associate and get caught up in that same rap over and over and over and over, because it's not going to do you any good. But the biggest takeaway from that is that I personally see is that you got to take personal accountability and responsibility, and because a lot of times you could be part of the problem too.
All right. Here's a less serious question, and you probably won't answer it, but if this is from Peter C. If you could punch someone in the face without repercussions, who would be on top? And since you probably won't answer it, you could say fictional characters too.
My biggest thing with that is, oh man, when I used to work security, I used to work in the bars, and bar fights would break out, and I'd hit somebody, the fucking bicepial tendonitis and the shoulder tendonitis would just fuck my squat up. So, I mean, honest to God, that's the first thing that went through my head is like, who is actually worth fucking my squat and bench up, because I know my biceps tendon's going to hurt like a motherfucker.
Someone's got to be worth it.
I don't know if I can't think of anybody. It's just, maybe I've just gotten too old and I'm too indifferent. You know, it takes a lot to get under my skin, and then if somebody gets under my skin, I'm gonna ask them about it. You know, unfortunately, I mean, this is gonna sound fucking awful. If it's anybody, it's my 15-year-old kid. And the little fucker not doing his homework and shit like that pisses me off to no end. But you can't do that, you know, because then the police show up and there's going to be a big fucking problem. So there's their answer.
Okay.
Jesus, I can't believe I just said that.
Sorry.
I love the kid to death, but holy cow. Teenagers, man.
Any tips or advice with mindset, getting in the zone during a meet? Obviously, we made that video, Into the Void, which kind of talks about that, but maybe a quicker summary answer on that, or anything you got to add to that?
Yeah, everybody should. I mean, if you're not familiar with an arousal curve or the peak arousal curve or whatever, a bell curve, you know, I'm not really sure what it's called. You know, my computer died. I can't look it up. I'm sure you can figure it out. But there's an optimal state of arousal when it comes to training, especially lifting max weights, that you want to get to. And that state, it might be a little bit higher than what you think it is. You don't know when you've gone too far until you've gone too far. So there's a lot of people that I don't think really, really know how to get there. Then once you teach them how to get there, then they'll have this really fucking awesome day. And then they start using it all the time. And then they start overtraining and they start getting burned out because they're not able to recover from that. Because there's a difference between a competitive state and a training state. But you need to know how to get into that competitive state. So I do think that can be trained in the gym. And that's just finding and looking. You have to know how to read a lifter's nonverbals. You have to see through. I can tell in a lifter's eyes if they're going to make a weight or miss a weight, especially if it's a maximal weight. I can tell in their eyes before they even do it. And sometimes I'll pull them back and try to self-correct, you know, try to change their state to be able to get them where they need to be. You know, other times I'll let them miss and then explain afterwards, this is why, and then get them in the state and then have them make it that second time. But once you know they've gotten it, once they've gone too far, and you know they've gone too far when they lose the ability to really set up, or they lose the ability to really, really brace and get tight, or they lose the ability to focus, because you still got to have that specific aggressive arousal mental state, but maintain the ability to still focus and do what you have to do as far as getting tight with the weights. Teaching that, it's a slow process, you know, and it just takes time. You know, I think they need to learn how to get tight before you can even begin to bridge this gap, because getting tight is part of the process. They need to learn how to breathe before you can get into this process, because breathing is part of changing your mental state. They need to learn how to visualize, even if it's just as simple as visualizing a flame or visualizing a match or a candle. They just need to be able to see something. They don't need to be able to see the actual lift being executed, but step one is just to be able to see something, Because I'll hear a lot of people tell a lifter, picture yourself doing the lift, and they're going to close their eyes and they're just going to see this blank mess, or they're going to close their eyes and see green dots, or they'll see white dots, or they'll see blobs here and there. They're not going to, if they tell them to close their eyes and focus on a flame, close your eyes, focus, on something that they know, your dog, I don't give a shit what it is. And then you can get them to focus on that, and then you're able to move them, closer to whatever state that needs to be in. Picture your dog, picture your dog pissed, picture your dog with his teeth like wanting to rip a fucking rabbit's head off. Now you're getting, and you'll see, their chest moving, their belly moving, their breathing state starting to change. You'll see their eyes start to change. You'll start to see these things change. But you need to be looking for them, and you need to not expect these changes to happen overnight. But I think that answers the question, right?
Yeah. It's like 3:40. How much time we got?
You can keep going.
Okay. Thoughts or words on raising boys into men of action and honor in this day and age, as well as molding ourselves into those men as well. I appreciate all you two do, and thank you. That's from Vanilla Gorilla Farilla.
I think we all need to realize that we're the role models. If you have kids, or if you're working with kids, or even if you're an older lifter and you're working with younger lifters, you may not want to be the role model, Dennis Rodman quote, but you are, you're still kind of setting an example. You're still setting a standard, and you have to, everything starts in my mind with accountability and responsibility. You can talk about discipline, and motivation, all these other, you can talk about all these other things, which all matter. They're all important. But if you don't have accountability and responsibility, everything else just falls apart, because there's no trust. There's nothing else there. So that has to be displayed, before it can be returned. So if you show, accountability, and you show the responsibility, like if you fuck up, if I'm a coach with a lifter and I fucked up, I'm a coach with a lifter and it was the wrong percent, it was my mistake, and I'm accountable for that over a period of time, that accountability will start to come through with the people that you're working with. And once you start to develop that, then all other attributes will be able to follow from there, because with accountability and responsibility, it's kind of the framework of leadership, which you want your people to be able to develop people underneath them. And for them to develop people underneath them, they need to be able to trust those people to be accountable for what they ask them to do, and responsible for the outcome of what they ask them to do. So that's really where I think the focus falls. I think a lot of the focus today is on, they're lazy, they're not motivated, they're, they don't grind, or whatever the hell it is. I think the focus is just, it's a little misplaced, and maybe it's a little misplaced because the people who are doing the misplacing don't want to take accountability for it. They don't want to take accountability that if they feel like the generation underneath them is all fucked up, they don't want to take accountability for that. They most certainly don't want to take responsibility for it. But what if they did? Then actions can start moving things forward. And obviously you're not going to change the world. You're just going to be able to work with and change and the people that are closest to you, to be able to help them with those attributes, because those are the things that are going to end up mattering the most.
All right. Can the ability to grind a lift be taught or improved?
I think it can be taught and improved. That's why I like the max effort method so much, because a lot of people, you're only going to be able to grind. You're only going to be able to strain for so long. And everybody's ability to do that is going to be a little bit different, but give or take a couple seconds, it's not that much. So let's just say I'm going to give a big generalization here. Let's say that somebody has the ability to strain for 3 to 5.8 seconds. And that's it. All right. So if they smoke a lift, that's fine. But if it goes to 5.9 seconds, they're missing it. I do think that you can get somebody's ability to strain to increase a little bit. Not much, but maybe enough to go to that 5.9. But I do think that you can increase and change their ability of what goes on in their mind at 4 seconds when they begin to realize, oh shit, this is going to take 5.8 seconds. And then they can learn and mentally make that cognitive choice, accelerate, or hips, or traps. You know, they make that verbal cue to try to find a way to get that little quarter of a second off, so it doesn't go into that threshold that we're not prepared for. So that goes back to the ability to strain and think, which when you do your max effort type training, you should have some max effort exercises that are going to only last, say, between 1 and 2, 3 seconds, in that range. You should have other ones that are going to last between 3, 4, 5 seconds. Other ones that might even go a little bit longer than that, into the, 7 seconds is fucking ridiculously crazy. But I mean, I'm talking concentric straining. So if you're talking the entire lift, it can increase even more so. But that way, when you're looking at, and I'm trying, as I said earlier, I don't want to confuse things too much, but these are some of the things that you want to look at if you're working with lifters that are higher on the food chain, that they're more developed, they're intermediate to advanced lifters. These are the things that you really need to start paying attention to, is how long can they strain before shit starts to happen. With an intermediate or beginner, it's just, can they strain and not fucking look like shit? Can they strain and not have their technique fall apart? Because what's going to happen with them is they're going to strain, technique's going to break, they're going to miss the lift. What's going to happen with a more advanced lifter is they're going to strain, they're going to start to run out of time, and then they're going to miss the lift. So they're missing for two different reasons, where you can't try to focus, one attribute and say, okay, I need to take this beginner and get them to be able to strain for longer periods of time, when they're not really going to ever miss because of that. They're going to miss because of technical breakdown, or just because they're fucking weak. Where the advanced guy very rarely is going to miss because of a technical issue. They're going to miss because of their ability to strain, or their ability to recover from chaos.
If you could go back and start life again, would you choose powerlifting and maybe not get injured so much?
I would choose powerlifting in a second. I think it's taught me more about life than probably any other sport could have. The only thing that's going through my mind, when I'm not speaking, I'm thinking, obviously. And sometimes I wonder if the people wondering what's going through my head. What's going through my head is, am I really a team player? Am I not a team player? This all goes back. It goes back, man. Everything goes back, to one fucking conversation over 2 fucking sports so many years ago. Some things just stick sometimes, where what's going through my head is, what if I would have been more geared towards a team sport? Would I be a better leader than I am today? Where, it's a what if type. I don't like those things, man. That's why I said earlier, I didn't want to leave the sport asking what ifs, because what ifs drives me fucking crazy, because you don't ever know, definitively what the answer is. Because I could say, now, if it was a team sport, could I be a better leader? But would I even be in a position to lead anything if I was? So you don't know. I'm kind of happy with the way things turned out. It's not been an easy road. I don't think it is for anybody. Everybody's road's going to be a little bit different. I've definitely made my share of mistakes, if not more. And yeah, it would be powerlifting without a doubt. You know, if probably to the extent of not even participating in any other sports, but I'm kind of afraid to put that out there because I don't want to influence kids to not be multi-sport athletes, because I do think that's fundamental in their development, and it is really important. I'm just from my own mental mindset.
All right, tips on a sprained hamstring for recovery.
I've only pulled my hamstring a couple times personally. Once squatting, and it really wasn't that bad. So that was just, you know, old school ice, you know, elevation, rest, and then that was like on a Monday max effort type thing. And then that Friday I was fine. I think I might have had to put a knee wrap on it for a week. And that night I wore a neoprene fat reducer sleeve, you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
around my leg. The second time was in a meet, and I pulled my hamstring on my last deadlift, obviously. And that motherfucker hurt. That was black and blue for a while. That was probably black and blue for a month. You know, there's still a hole in the back of the hamstring from that. And it was funny, the couple of times I did get real lean. You know, it's not a fun process getting lean. I didn't enjoy it. You know, I didn't like the way I looked. But I liked the mental challenge. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. But the most interesting part was when you get really lean, you see what real damage you did to yourself, because you don't have all the fat holding the, you know, fat plugging the holes of where everything's fucked up. But there's a fucking gaping hole in the hamstring. So that one was a bitch. And fortunately, because it happened at a meet, I was able to, you know, back down for a couple weeks because, you know, Louie, there was no off season with Louie. So if you did the meet on Saturday or Sunday, max effort work was on Monday. So I couldn't do anything, you know, so it was just accessories on that day. Then I think the second week, I wasn't really able to do anything again. And then by that third week, I was able to start doing reverse band, high rep stuff. But from the onset, from the first day, second day, when we got home, so 2 days later, I started with seated band leg curls with a mini band with a very small range of motion, because when I say it hurt like a motherfucker. So, I mean, we're just talking like 1/30 seconds of a rep. I mean, it's just for hundreds of reps, you know, just for time. I think that's when Louie, we did a lot of things for time. So it was for whatever the song was on the radio for 3 or 4 sets there, and tried to see if it would get any blood in it. Like, would there be a pump? And it took till Wednesday, that bench day, to where I could start to actually feel the muscle contract. It still hurt like hell, but I could feel it actually contract instead of just being 100% pure pain. When I got to the point where I felt it could contract, I started doing stiff leg deadlifts out of a power rack. So I set the power rack at the highest level I could. So the bar was like at my waist. So say it's a pin pull, basically, is what I'm doing. And I'm lifting the bar an inch. So I only moved the bar in the range of motion that didn't hurt, which was about an inch, maybe 2 inches, and would do 50 to 100 reps. And this was while doing the bench work in the gym. So while I was in the gym, I might have been able to do 3 or 4 sets, I worked at a gym at the time. So as soon as I got back to where I worked, I probably did another 10, 15 sets of that throughout the day. When I was able to go down a pinhole, was using the west side hole spacing, so it's ½ inch or whatever, I would move it down. Within 2 days, I was on pin 4. So we're talking about mid-shin. And after that, by that Friday, I was on pin 1, which was pretty much very close to the same as having a plate on the floor. And then I started to load it with a 5 or a dime per side, and then I call it stripping the rack. I used the rack to slide the bar up and down the rack, similar to how you would do if I had a Smith machine. I would have used that. So just to get the muscle to work through that range of motion, all while still doing the banded leg curls. And that proceeded through that next Monday, and then that next Friday I was on week 1 of the next squat cycle. So it was a multiple time a day thing that I was doing multiple times a day, 15, 20 times a day. I had the ability to do it 15 or 20 times a day. Ultra high repetitions, trying to get blood flow in the area as much as I possibly could. If I felt like I overdid it, which I did a couple times, then I iced it, but that was it. The rest of the time it was either the hot tub, or I had access to a hot sauna or a wet sauna and dry sauna, which I would contrast with a cold shower, in between there. I'm getting very detailed, but I think the key component of the reason why I was able to do this with my hamstring as fast as I could was because of the due diligence of being able to do it so frequently and sticking to the plan and not going off plan from that, and knowing with 100% certainty that there was going to be no issue coming back from that. So hamstrings are a tough one. Bill Starr has, there's a book called The Strongest Will Survive. It might be really hard to find. I think you still might be able to get it. Mark Ripito may still sell it. He's got a section in there on how he used to have his football players overcome hamstring pulls. And it was using, I believe, high repetition ass to grass squats. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure about that. Somebody may quote or mention it in the comment section. If you do put it in the comment section, just avoid all the dicks that usually post in the YouTube comment sections. That's why I don't read any of them. But if you do post what was in there, please make sure it's accurate. Just don't make some bullshit up. Put it in there, because it's a good protocol that he used as well that should be used to stimulate ideas. It shouldn't be used as therapy or prescription or anything like that, because I'm not a doctor. Again, I'm just telling you what I did.
All right, can we do one more here?
Yeah.
So I'm going to probably butcher the name here. James Zbierski. He said, what do you consider your best body weight that you were your strongest, and roughly around what body fat percentage do you think that was, specifically in the bench?
Oh, man. I mean, the bench, that's a tough one, because my bench, I would say around 240, because that's when I hit a 545 raw, something around that range. And body fat wise, this was, pre-West Side, and I was kind of bodybuilding at the time as well, under 10%, calipered, probably even a little bit lower than that. You could see all my abs, and, I don't want to say I had quad striations, but you could see, quad separation, if that fucking means anything. But my strongest body weight was where I really felt like I came into my own was probably 285. Had I been able to extend the career a little bit more and push it to 295 and feel the same way I felt at 285, in other words, put on 6 more pounds of muscle, 5 more pounds of muscle, then maybe it would have been a little bit better. But I really had anything over 285 was just bloat in hell, and just for leverage reasons. But I always felt better, lighter, but I didn't lift as big because I didn't have the retention, the water retention, and the leverages that I needed. But in the gym, just for overall strength, like everything that I would do in training, that was the weight I felt the best at. As far as body fat wise, I can't really give you a definitive answer. I did work as a personal trainer. I coordinated a program at the time. We did have fitness testing. We did have the metal skin fold calipers. We did 7-site skin fold caliper measurements on most of the clients. I quit doing that after my first year, which is another conversation that we can have at a different time. I thought it was a waste of time to do with new clients. I think it's evasive. I think it turns people off, but that's, like I said, something to discuss later. One of the more qualified trainers did it might have been a 5-site skin fold caliper on me, and it was like 7.5, which is total bullshit. You know it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. So if it was like the Perillo, I think as a 10 or 12 site, I probably would have put it around 14, 15, somewhere in that range, maybe a little bit more. There was kind of abs, but it wasn't flabs.
They're asking me your height as well.
5'11".
Okay.
I wasn't concerned about that. Honest to God, I was not. I was fucking concerned about my weight. I'm not going to lie about that, because keeping my weight up was really hard. So I would weigh myself every morning I got to work, and I weighed myself every night before I left. And obviously you should weigh more at night. If I was 3 pounds off what I weighed at night, I would stop and get food. I would get an extra stupid, like it matters. I'm just going to shit it out in the morning, but it mattered to me that I had to. It's funny because when you're trying to gain weight, you always care the most about what you weigh at night. And then when you're trying to lose weight, you always care the most about what you weigh in the morning when you're naked. We can go a little more if you want. And, but I really didn't care. What I cared about was my strength on the platform. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie, it did bother me that I was not filling my weight class, because I think the most I weighed in at was 312, and that was a bench meet. That wasn't it. Usually if I'd hit like 96, 98, 302, 304, that's where I was at. I always kind of felt like I was giving up 10 pounds, but it is what it is. It was so fucking hard to go from that. And if I fell under 80, I freaked out. Then I went on a rampage eating everything that I could eat, because I should never fall under 80, because then it was going to take way too long to get back into striking range to be able to get over the 300s. Is there any more that are live?
We got one more from the live from Mike P. Would you recommend using the American Grip cambered bar for overhead press if a person has shoulder issues?
If it helps, yes. The thing with the American bars is you hope that changing the grip position is going to put less stress on the shoulder joint. And in theory, it should. Sometimes with some of the grips it does for me. Sometimes with some of the grips it doesn't for me. So if it still hurts, then flip the bar upside down, see if that changes, because the grip of the angle grip might change a little bit, or try one of the other grips and go from there. If it hurts, say for the first 2-3 reps, but then it gets better every rep after that, so at the end of the set it doesn't hurt, then that's probably an exercise that's going to help you. If it's going to hurt all the way through, then find a different exercise to do. Did you look at my IG to see what those were?
I'll check right now. There's a couple more, though, here.
Okay.
Here's a good one. How long did it take you to get shredded with when you were working with Justin Harris?
I want to say 26 weeks. And I started this whole process with Berardi, which was, if people go back and read that, it's an interesting story because every time I tried to eat healthy, I'd throw up. And now I understand a little bit more why that was compared to, back then. But I kept, I knew how I used to diet when I did a few bodybuilding shows years ago before all this. And so, I knew, I didn't, and I should know better, have a freaking degree in nutrition, just went straight to chicken and rice and I'm just throwing everything up. But when I hooked up with Justin, it wasn't even, the idea wasn't even in my head. He was a bodybuilder who just won the junior nationals, I believe, and was going to train, the junior USAs. And he was going to train for the junior, or for the USAs, and did a powerlifting meet just for shits and giggles, and totaled something really good, like 2,200 pounds. And so we kind of hooked up, and I talked to him because he would fill a nutrition role that we really wanted to fill on the site. I've always kind of I've always admired bodybuilders for the discipline that they do. And while it really wasn't my first love, I've always followed bodybuilding. And it may have been my first love had I had more exposure to it, but my first exposure was powerlifting, and it's probably still would have ended up powerlifting because there's nothing better than standing up with a heavy weight. But when we talked, it just kind of clicked, and I'd come off, I rebounded, which is I'm kind of known for, rebounded off where Berardi had me down to, which was, I don't know what the weight was, 240, something like that. And Justin and I were talking, and I was baffled because I'm really intrigued with the higher end strength sports. If it's bodybuilding, strongman, weightlifting, physique, fucking any of them. Any of them, when you get to that top level, just to get a little bit better, that's like ridiculous to me. That's like taking somebody, that's got great genetics and worked really hard, and then finding a way to get them better. That's in the world of strength and conditioning and programming. That's knowing your shit. To be able to take those people and make them better is knowing your shit, because everybody thinks it falls down to chemicals and all the other kind of stuff, and it doesn't. It falls down to a lot more than that. And I was always intrigued with how in the fuck, an average, not an average, but how a amateur bodybuilder could turn pro and then within the first 2 years put on 20 pounds of muscle mass, lean body mass. How the fuck does that, to relate that to powerlifting, that would be like a powerlifter gets their elite total in powerlifting or their pro total in powerlifting, and then within a year later they put 400 pounds on their total in the same weight class. How the fuck, and I could not for the life of me figure that out. And Justin and I were talking about it one day, and he said, well, it'd be easier if I just showed you. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what am I going to get myself into with this one? And so I did. And I got a lot of respect for fucking bodybuilding I didn't have before. Let's just put it that way. It's the commitment is, it's unless you've done it, it's not. And I told him from the very beginning I would only go to a point that was about 4 or 5 weeks out. I was not going to go any further than that because I knew I was going to look like shit. I was going to look like chopped mincemeat because of all the muscle tears. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to risk my health and go that far. But even getting that far, holy fuck, it's your whole life. And it's, I don't want to sit here and harp on it and all this, but it's more than just the training and the diet and, all the other things that go along with it. It's 24/7 your entire fucking life. And there may be people that are more genetically inclined that's easier for them to be able to slide through, all power to them, but that is not the fucking majority. And so that's why the 26 weeks, because it's, I thought I was lean. I fucking wasn't lean, and it just kept fucking going and going and going. And, I don't regret the experience. I learned a lot from the experience, and, even worked with Shelby afterwards to try to do a little bit different, to see if there was a way to do it that was not so time consuming, and found out that there really wasn't. It's just the time devoted differently. He was really big into cardio at the time. And then worked with John to be able to see if there's a way to do this and get a little bit leaner and not have to worry so much about the cardio, but still found out it still takes, this huge giant time commitment. And, I'm not saying I'm not going to, diet or get lean again, because I will, but I'm not going to be fucking posting pictures of my abs and shit like that. Those days are fucking gone. I'd rather do my stupid spider bar squats and lift heavier weights, because that's what I enjoy. And that's how I'm going to spend the rest of my life, lifting the heaviest fucking shit I can. And so then when they go to burn me apart, there's going to be nothing left but a pile of dust and titanium.
You want to take a few more?
Yeah.
All right. I'm sure your answer will be depends, and you don't have enough details. But how would you change bench programming if trying to maintain bench strength while losing body fat?
I would make a decision, man. Most of the time when I get asked this question, it's coming from a beginner or a lower end intermediate. If this is not the case, please ask me at a different time and be more specific about that so I can answer it a little bit differently. I get a lot of questions like this, especially through the Instagram DMs. I think the most important thing for you to do is just to pick one of them and focus on it. So if your goal is to lose body fat, lose the body fat. Do the work that you have to do to lose the body fat. If you have to do the cardio, do the cardio. If you need to increase the volume, increase the volume. Whatever you have, there's multitudes of different ways to lose body fat. There is no one best way. Don't let anybody sell you on that bullshit. But just do that. Hit that goal, get down there, nail that objective. Then when you're there, build your bench back up again, and go that route. And it will take you less time doing that and less stress than freaking the fuck out every time your bench feels a little off because you might be a little glycogen depleted on a certain day that you go to bench. Then you're like, oh shit, I got to go have a cheat meal. And then fucking 3 months from now, you still haven't lost any body fat. So pick the one, nail it, hit it, build the other one back. That's the best advice I can give.
All right. I was just cleared by my surgeon to start benching again after a rotator cuff surgery. I have 7 weeks to train for meet. What would be the best method / program to follow to maximize the time I have to rebuild my bench?
Do you have to do the meet? I mean, you were just cleared and you're telling me that you got 7 weeks, which to me I call it a starting gate. And that's when you're at a good point and your conditioning is solid and your state of readiness is solid, your GPP is solid to be able to start training for a meet. To me, that's about 10 weeks out, for a normal to average lifter. Maybe 8 if they're really, really advanced, but still I like to see that being 10. You're telling me 7 post-surgery. So my first question is, how important is this meet? Because if it's not that important, fuck this meet. Find another one. Push it out. Find something 14 weeks out. Find something 20 weeks out. Go through, make sure, especially with the rotator cuff, a lot of people will re-tear that really easy. There's a lot of stability issues that need to be worked with that. A lot of other things kind of get shifted around. There's a lot of weird compensation crap that goes on with the rotator cuff. You probably waited too long before you had it done, which means that there's even more compensation shit going on with that that's already impacted the way that your bench technique is right now. So your bench technique could be a little bit more uneven from one side to the other because of the rotator cuff being weak that the other side's been trying to take up for that, or vice versa. And there's also front to back, so you could be using more, pack than you are using, teres and your lats, your upper back and rotator cuff muscles. So without getting into a lot of detail, I think you're rushing it at the 7 weeks. I really do. What was the second part of that?
Hold on a second. I'm having trouble finding it here.
All right. Anyhow, it really shouldn't matter. I think that's what the biggest thing is. I don't think that you would be able to, if you were sitting here with me, I don't think you would be able to convince me that this is a good idea to do in 7 weeks. And I've had some crazy motherfucking lifters sit across from me and present me with some of the craziest, stupidest shit that I've agreed to and said, fine, let's roll. I don't think you would be able to convince me on this one, dude. I don't think it's worth it for, a plastic trophy that you might not be able to get a PR on. So it's think more long term.
Unless you really like that surgeon, you want to see him again.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, this might be a good one to end on. What's the most important thing that people often overlook when opening their own gym?
Money. It's fucking people think money grows on trees. And years ago I was asked, what's the most important thing when it comes to running a business? And I said, it's working capital. And a lot of people disagreed with me. And there's a lot of reasons to disagree with that. But your working capital, the amount of money that you have in the bank to spend, man, that fucking matters. Because when that hits zero, you got to pull on a credit line or you got to find somebody to borrow money from. And you don't want it to hit zero. You never want it to hit zero. You want it to be able to grow. And the more that you can get that to grow, the more you're going to be able to invest in the people that you have, the more you're going to be able to bring in other people, the more you're going to be able to bring in, other equipment and other services and other marketing and all that other kind of stuff. And the more you're aware of that, the more you're going to begin to understand what I call the metrics of money, what it really is. A dollar spent is not the same thing as a dollar earned. It's not even close. Hopefully now, because of, Shark Tank and The Profit and all these other shows that are on there, people are starting to get a little bit better clue between what margins are. But, and I'm not sure because I am not in the gym industry. I speak to enough gym owners to know roughly where their margins should be, what they should be spending on payroll and, basic stuff like that. But, retail is a motherfucker. Retail is a whole nother world where I think the worst I've heard is grocery, to where a typical product in a grocery store, they might have a gross margin of, say, 40%. So say every product that they sell for $1, they make 40 cents on. Gross. That's before they pay for the building, they pay for the cashiers, they pay for the insurance, they pay for all those expenses. Once you rip through all those expenses, they're down to 2%, which gets them down to $2. So for every $100 they bring in, they have $2 that they have in net profit. So when you start looking at that from that perspective, for example, I'll have people present me all these great opportunities for the company. They can make me $100,000 or whatever it's going to be. They're going to make me tons of money, and it's only going to cost me $10,000. So out of the $10,000, just let's pick an even number. All right, so let's say my net is 10%, which it's not. but let's say my net is 10%. I need a $100,000 return on that just to break even. So this is one. I get hit with sponsorships for powerlifting meets all the time. So, and they always promise these grand, huge returns. So on this $5,000 investment, I'm going to make you a ton of money. All right, fine. On that $5,000 investment, I need, 10%. I need 50,000 in sales. How can you guarantee that you're going to generate 50,000 in sales from what I'm going to be able to give you? Those are the questions that you need to ask yourself when it's coming to working capital and when it's coming to money. And if somebody is really confident, then they should be willing to flip the deal and say, okay, that's fine. Why don't you sell the $50,000 first? And then as soon as you do that, I'll be more than happy to write you the check for $5,000. Well, see, nobody ever wants to do that. Every deal for 21 years that I've ever flipped, the exact same deal back on them, every single one has been turned down. And the only time I ever do that is when they guarantee that they can have that return on the investment. So you see in these shows, know your numbers. What I'm telling you is know your profit, know your money, know your cash, know what you have to spend, and then spend it intelligently. Spend it on things that are going to make your brand different than somebody else's brand. Make your gym different than somebody else's gym. If you walk into my gym, you know this is Elite FTS. If you walk into the Spot Athletics, whom we outfitted, it's the Spot Athletics. It's our equipment, but that whole fucking place is branded the Spot Athletics. So when we custom build for somebody, we're building it so when people walk in their facility, it's branded for them. So when people walk in there, they know that. That is more of an investment than buying some off-the-shelf shit that you're going to walk into that 1,000 other clubs have exactly the same thing. Because if you go that route, which is fine, I don't want to sit here and make this a sales pitch, which is fine. If you go that route and that's what you do, what are you going to do to make your place different than somebody else's besides the fact that you're just a better trainer? Because I got news for you. You're not. The skill set that it takes to train the average person that walks through most strength and conditioning facilities, CrossFit centers, or gyms, the skill set that's required to make those people better is far less than people think it is. The skill set that needs to be developed with those people that are opening these places up is the skill set in regards to their marketing and their business acumen.
All right, last thing I think to end it on, real quick, is Mike P said, will we ever get the T-shirt with your old dirty Toledo hat on it that was teased a year or two ago?
Man, if we can find a way to make it not look, it may actually look better looking just as bad as it was, though.
I mean, it can't be the clean version.
No, I know that, but the way that we did it is you just dragged it on a, you know what I'm saying? We just took the tee, we just drug it on a shirt, so it looks terrible. But maybe making it look terrible might be the way to do it. I mean, if you guys want it, we can do it. I'll tell you what, we'll consider it. I don't believe I'm going to say this because I said I would never do this. Fuck. We'll consider it if you subscribe to the. Oh Jesus, I am not going to do this. We'll consider it if you subscribe to the channel. What the fuck else are you supposed to do? Like the stupid page.
Share
videos. Make a comment. Hit notifications. All this. Fuck, I'm not doing it. I'll tell you what. We'll do the shirt. We'll look into it. I can't sit here and do all the cheesy, stupid follow our channel bullshit because everybody else does it. And to be honest with you, I really don't give a fuck if people follow the channel or not. I do this for people who already do follow us, who already know who we are. I'm not doing this to try to generate more business. I'm not doing it to generate bigger business. I'm doing this to better service the customers that we already have, and I'm doing this to better service the customers who support us, or better service those and support those who already support us. So it's not that I don't want the company to grow. I do. I'm just far more concerned in taking the best care of those people who support us. So I can't make myself go through all this subscribe notification stupid bullshit that everybody else does. I just am not to that point yet. Give me a few videos and maybe these guys will convince me otherwise, but that's kind of my position on it. So, you know, maybe you guys can let me know.
We do have one more comment saying to make the shirt.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe you guys let me know what you think about my last statement in the comments there.
All right.
That it? Or we got... God, that's a stupid looking hat though.